Yeah, today we are going to talk about exponents and some rules for combining terms that have exponents. So the first thing we need to talk about are what is an exponent, some characteristics of an exponent. So if we look here, we have two terms, x to the fourth and 2x to the negative 2. And so let's look at this right here. This negative 2 is the exponent. And the 2, or the x, is what we would call the base. And then that number in front we would call a coefficient. I'll shorten it, coefficient. And so the exponent is going to tell us how many times we multiply the base together. And then the coefficient is something that we're multiplying times this power. When we put the base together with the exponent, it's called a power. And it's getting a little messy here. So I'll rewrite this. And that little dot just means we're going to multiply these two terms. So when we have two terms that have the same base, so in this case, we have the same base, and they both have an exponent. What we can do to multiply is we can multiply the coefficients. So in this case, the coefficient is 1 since there was nothing there. So we can do 1 times 2. And I'll just show that with parentheses. And then we can multiply the bases, or the powers, so x to the fourth times x to the negative 2. And then to multiply these, what we're going to do is we're going to add the exponents. So I can multiply 2 times 1 and get 2. X to the fourth times x to the negative 2. That's what we're having to do here. That's this rule we're going to use now, is when we have like bases, so these are both the same base, x. When we have like bases, we are going to add the exponents to multiply them. That doesn't seem like natural, but when we multiply powers that have like bases, we just add their exponents. And so we're going to keep the same base, and we're going to add 4 plus negative 2, and that will be our new exponent. So we can simplify that to get 2x to the positive 2. 4 plus negative 2 is positive 2, and we've completed our multiplication. So one more time, we can multiply the coefficients together. 4 times 3. 4 times 3 gives us 12. I'm going to write this whole thing out, though. 4 times 3. And then I can do n to the negative 2 times n to the positive 3. So 4 times 3 gives us 12. And then these two are going to give us n still as our base, and we're going to do negative 2 plus 3. We're adding the exponents because these have like bases. We're not allowed to do this unless the bases are the same. And so now we can add those two. Negative 2 plus 3 is positive 1. And you can write the 1, but we don't have to. Whenever you see a letter or a number and it doesn't have an exponent, that means the exponent is 1. So both of these are fine. So I want you to try this one on your own and put your answer into the box provided to you. And then when you press play, I will have the answer here. If you got the answer wrong, I'm not going to go over the question, but if you got the answer wrong, please do raise your hand and ask me for help. So if you got 6p to the third power, good job. If you didn't, please raise your hand, ask me for help, and we can fix the mistake. So the next thing we need to know how to do is divide exponents. And again, in order to divide exponents, we have to have like bases. So if I look at this first one, I have some coefficients, and then I have some powers, b to the second, b to the third. Remember, the b's are the bases here, and the 2 and the 3 are the exponents. And so if we want to divide like bases with exponents, we will subtract the exponents. And we are going to subtract the top one minus the bottom one. And so we can divide 3 divided by 2. That gives us a decimal, so we're just going to leave it like that. That's as simple as that fraction gets. And then we will have, we will put our base in the top of the fraction. And so we do 2 minus 3. And that gives us 3b to the negative 1 over 2. And so now we would like to end our problem by having no negative exponents. And so what we can do is, if we have a negative exponent, we can take our power, b to the negative 1, and we can move it to the other side of the division bar. Much like when we're solving equations, if we move something to the opposite side or the other side, if we switch sides of the equal sign, we are going to switch signs on our term. If we switch sides of the fraction, if we switch where our power is from the top of the fraction to the bottom, we will switch its sign. And so we end up with 3 on top still, because that's the coefficient. It's not part of the power. 2 on the bottom, and then b to the positive 1. Let's try another one here. I can divide 3 divided by 4. If you do that in the Desmos, you will see that 3 divided by 4 is a decimal, and that's the simplest fraction gets. Then I'm going to do x to the 3 minus negative 3. 3 minus negative 3 gives us 6. And so I have no negative exponents. That's my answer. Again, we're going to do our subtraction in the top of the fraction, and then if we end up with a negative exponent, we will then move the power down. So again, I want you to give this one a try. Put your answer into the box provided, and then press play, and you will see the answer. If you don't get the correct answer, that's okay. Please make sure you raise your hand. You ask me for help before you move on, so that you can fix any mistakes you might make. So here is your answer. If you wrote it just as x, that's fine too. If you got this wrong, please do raise your hand and ask me for help, so that you don't make the same mistakes going forward as you practice. I'll be happy to help, and look forward to it. So I do want to show you a couple that look a little more complicated, but we're going to apply the same principles. We're going to apply these exponent rules, and I want to add in one exponent rule, and that is when I have a 0 exponent. Whenever you have 0 as an exponent, that whole power, so remember the exponent with the base is a power. Any power with a 0 exponent is equal to 1. So x to the 0 is equal to 1. 1 to the 0 is equal to, is equal to 1. 2 to the 0 is equal to 1. Anything to the 0 power is equal to 1. So we can put any number to the 0 power. We can put 1,000 to the 0 power, and it's equal to 1. So anytime I see a 0 power, a 0 exponent, I'm just going to change that to 1. So I can rewrite this. And so I'm going to clean up the top and then clean up the bottom, and then I can divide. So up on top, I don't have anything to multiply 3 by, so that stays the same. This y has 1 as its exponent since it's not written, so I can do y to the first times y to the third. I can add those exponents and get y to the fourth, and then x to the negative 2. Down here, I can multiply 2 times 1 and get 2. Three divided by 2, you'll find that's as simple as that fraction gets. We don't want decimals here, so we're going to leave that alone. I can divide y to the fourth and y to the first. Remember that y has a 1 if there's nothing written by subtracting. So 4 minus 1 gives me 3, and we do that subtraction at the top of the fraction. And then this x to the negative 2, it's got a negative exponent, so we're going to move this whole power, the whole thing, is going to go to the other side of the fraction and become positive. And that's as simple as that gets. I can't divide y to the 3 and x squared because they don't have the same base, and so therefore I can't do anything further. Let me do another one. I'm going to do the top first. I can do 3 times 3 and get 9. I can do x to the first times x squared. I will add those exponents, 1 plus 2, and get x to the third. And then y to the negative 3 is all by itself, so we'll leave it alone. On the bottom, this x to the 0, that power becomes 1, because anything to the 0 power is 1. And then y to the negative 3, well, that's just going to stay the same. And so now I can do some division. 9 divided by 1 is 9. There's no other x's, so x to the third stays the same. I can do y to the negative third divided by y to the negative third by subtracting negative 3 minus negative 3. And when I do negative 3 minus negative 3, I get 0. And then one more thing to do. Anything to the 0 power is 1, so I can turn that into a 1. And I end up with 9x to the third, because 9 times 1 is 9. So these can be a little tricky. You just have to take your time, do one step at a time, and of course, if you get stuck, the best thing to do is ask for help. So I have 4 problems like the beginning ones here. Make sure you answer all these questions. If you get stuck, please ask for help. And then 4 more. These ones take a little bit more thought. Take your time on these. If you get stuck while you're doing them, please make sure you ask for help.